Welcome to this episode of Velo Unlocked. In today's conversation, Dr. Nick Serio sits down with Detroit Tigers pitcher Brendan White. Brendan takes us through his approach to preparation, managing the mental side of the game, and how he handles different types of hitters at higher levels. From refining his mechanics to learning how to read swings and adjust pitch sequences, Brendan shares invaluable insights that can elevate any pitcher's game. This episode is brought to you by Ardor Energy, VeloU's #1 energy resource.
With the emergence of PitchCom, a lot of kids have gone from being a competitor in high school, when their high school typically doesn't have a PitchCom, right? To, they're really entrenched in the game. They're really, they're thinking about batter to batter, right? The sequence, everything. So now they hit in college and they're just basically like along for the ride. The entire game is getting called for them. They don't even know who the batters are that are stepping in the box. They have no idea how to sequence them. They're just blindly entrusting whatever is given to them, which I'm not saying they shouldn't be, but there's a distinct difference between, hey, throw this fastball away, when, the coach might just be errantly just calling fastball away. And if you had done your research on the guy and know, like, hey, 80% of his, fastball hits are coming off of fastball low and away, okay, if I got to throw it away, I'm going to throw it up and away. Because that was somewhat of a cold zone for him. So what I'd really like to go over is, I'm just, number one, thank you for coming on. Number two, I'm always impressed, enamored. I love how much preparation you often put into it. And what I'd like to know first is how much of that preparation is really to bolster confidence?
Okay, so... Well, thank you. Yeah, preparation, obviously, I think is everything. Going into it, the game is such a wild card with the things that can happen that, making sure that you are at your sharpest going into it just like gives you the best opportunity to be successful, because when you get into the game, like anything could happen and you can never fully be prepared, but you got to check off as many boxes as possible to make sure that you are, I guess, capable of handling these whatever situation arises. So, I guess. Well, what was the second piece that you were saying?
My real question is like, there's the number one conversation I have with all college pitchers that we deal with, and frankly, a lot of the minor league guys too, right? Is and the pro guys, but like, is their ability to manage their mental landscape within a game. It gets out of control and the game starts speeding up on them and spiraling. So how much of your preparation allows you to sort of mitigate that?
Yep. Okay. So I think that there's a pretty good way to, as like a track, like a path to follow in order to, like, I guess, kind of get to like the point that we're talking about. And that's like, the first thing is like, you have to know what you're good at, right? So like, you have to know what pitches are successful, where you throw it, when you throw it, and I guess the conviction behind it should always be there. But like the lower level of the minor leagues, especially like in college and stuff, like I remember learning, where do my pitches play the best? Like, where do I have to put a fastball in order to get an out, to get a ground ball? Like, before data and stuff, this is what that's what pitching was. It was learning where your stuff played the best to get a ground ball. Not that you're really ever shooting for like flyouts, but like to get a ground ball or to get a punch. Like, how do you get there? So for me, it was like heaters down, sinkers down and in, sliders at the bottom of the zone or below the zone to induce a chase. Drop a curve. I had a curveball at the time, like drop a curveball in early to get them off the fastball that I could use the slider late. So like college and the lower levels, it was kind of just, where do I, like, learning what you're good at and what's successful. How do I get a ground ball? How do I get a punch out? Once you get there, or like once you have that understanding, then, I mean, you can use your stuff to know how to pitch. When you get up to like the double A and well, definitely triple A, maybe high A, but mostly double A is where you're going to see hitters that have really specific approaches. So if, let's just say there's a hitter and a righty who just hammers first pitch fastballs. I know a strength of mine is that I can drop in a slider like in zone pretty often. So me having an idea and looking at his data, seeing that he hammers first pitch fastballs, I'm not going to do that. I have to go to a different weapon in order to get a ground out or to get a strike. So I'll go to a slider. And the thing is with double A is these guys or double A or the higher levels is these guys will stick to their approach much more than guys at the lower levels. Like that's why in rookie ball or in college, you'll see guys chase out of the zone or chase at pitches that just like, what the hell is this kid swinging at? Like that's, because they don't necessarily have a defined approach at the plate. So in the lower levels, it's really tough to sequence because guys will be swinging at stuff and you're like, I don't think you really should be swinging at that. Like that doesn't really make much sense. Like it doesn't follow a plan. But in double A, you throw, let's just say you throw that first pitch slider and he takes it, but then you go back to a fastball to try and sneak it by him and whack, like, he takes a hack at it. Which is what you'd expect. So you have to make sure you put it in a good spot.
It's very interesting. It's like it's like the younger levels you're going from a bad checkers player to the higher levels you're playing an elite chess player. And what's interesting about that is like the randomness that maybe a bad checkers player, me, when I'm playing, right? Or even like a bad chess player, right? Because maybe I don't understand the rules or understand how to navigate, and I don't have a clear objective of what I want to accomplish. And it's interesting that it almost becomes slightly easier to follow your approach to that guy because you know what they're going to swing at and not swing at. And then ultimately you're just trying to find that one little edge. And I think, so tell me this, so how much time and how often are you like actually doing that preparation to understand each hitter?
The beginning of a series is typically when it happens. So like today is the first game of a 6-game series. And so as a staff, we're going to go through like the relieving core. We're going to go through the scouting report and the hitters, see who's hot on that team. Like who is it, who's swinging the bat the best and what are they swinging at? And we'll go over some numbers, I like to keep it as simple as possible. Like you take a look at punch rate, so like K rate and walk rate. If you see a high K rate and a low walk rate, this dude is hacking. He's going to be swinging at pitches out of the zone. He's going to be a super aggressive hitter. So that kind of tells you something, and vice versa. If you drop the K rate, raise the walk rate, this guy is going to be a little bit more patient. You're going to have to put the ball in the zone a little bit more often, and you're not going to be chasing as much. Well, you're not going to be setting base pitches. So once you kind of have like an idea of the lineup itself and the type of team that this is going to be, is it a power team? Is this going to be like, not that hit and runs happen that often, but like a contact team, guys who are just kind of putting the ball in play, who are going to swipe a couple bags. Like once you kind of understand the team identity and what they're trying to do at the plate, then you can help use the strengths that that you've learned over the last few years to say, okay, well, what type of pitches am I going to be throwing? An example of this was in 23. It's actually right before I came and saw you during the All-Star break. We were playing the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays were a team that had a super high ground ball rate, and they were super first pitch aggressive. So for me, I said, well, that sounds like I'm going to be throwing a ton of sinkers today. Like for that series, like we're going to be trying to get them to hit the ball into the ground, like first pitch sinker, and let's just see what happens. And I was successful for I think one or two outings that I had against them, using like that thought process.
I love how simple that is too. It's not like you're not sitting there saying like, oh hey, this guy has this whiff rate on a fastball up and away and this whiff rate down here. It's much more. It's less of the granular stats and much more of the global stats.
Yeah, it's tough, especially because when you're in the game and you're in the moment, it's one thing if we're sitting down, like we're both sitting in a chair where we can look at the computer screen. It can tell us that we're, that this guy does not hit heaters at the top and all this stuff. And his chase is 37% and his miss is, whatever. Like we can look at that. But when I'm on the mound and I'm walking up the back of the mound to go face this guy, like I'm not looking at him and seeing 37% chase at the top of the zone. Like I'm seeing a dude that I have to go and get out. Like that, it's me or him. So like having it in the back of your mind is obviously important, and knowing what weapon, like that is a weapon for me. So I want to get there, but I have to get to 2 strikes for that to matter first. And it's how am I getting there? And then I guess this is the more fun stuff. Like, what am I seeing in his swing? What have I seen in his previous ABs? You know, is he stepping in the bucket and ripping open on sliders, or is he trying to go pull side? Like, what have I seen earlier in the game that's going to help me determine what his approach is? You know, what is he trying to do? And then how can I use a strength of mine to counteract that?
So many things to unpack there, and I love that. So when you're watching, well, first off, how often are you referring back to? You keep this in a card, right, in your hat?
So in my hat, I'll have the lineup, the 2 strike, like essentially the K, right? Like 2 strike, chase, or in zone, which kind of changes my arsenal depending on like it kind of tells me what pitches that I should go to. You know, if there's chase, we can't give away secrets. I don't want to, but you know, I can go to some different pitches, and if I have to try and beat somebody in zone and stuff. So typically I'll look at it the most in between innings and prior to me going in, just as like a quick reference, not as much like I'm on the mound looking at it. Like, it's more so like, you know, have the card in my hand, watch the AB, and see if it checks out. You know, if there's something like everything, you know, the boxes should check, you know, the things that I'm paying attention to. But if there's something that's different, like maybe he's more patient that day, it's like, all right, well, then I can do something a little bit more simple. I don't have to be as I don't have to try and do too much to try and throw a first pitch strike. Like, if he's more patient, I can just throw whatever I want at him, and I don't have to, you know, think too much.
It's safe to say then throughout the game, assuming you're live for that game, right? Like, because we're talking about you're a reliever, right? So this is actually significantly harder because of the fact that, you know, it may be a random point in the game that you're going in against a random spot in the lineup. And then B, it may be back-to-back days. It may be not that day, 2 days later. So when you know you're live for that game, are you constantly double-checking your sort of thought process and approach for that day?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I think is like a really important piece that took me a little bit to learn was not just relying on the scouting report. Like, the scouting report will tell you everything, but when that hitter steps in the box that day, like, he could be doing something different. And at that point, like, the scouting report doesn't matter, because what the hitter is telling you versus what the scouting report is telling you, like, I mean, you know, those could be 2 contrasting things. Not that it typically is, you know, we're really good at scouting reports at this point, but you know, what the hitter is telling you in the box in that moment is the most important information that you can get in order for you to try and be successful. Like, you can't, you know, you fall back to the scouting report if you don't know really what to do. But what the hitter is telling you, you know, how comfortable he looks, his swings, you know, what pitches he's taking, if he's leaning over the plate, if if he's brushing back on stuff. Like, you get a ton of reads and a ton of information from that, regardless of the scouting report.
At what point in your career would you say that you had to really start to, let's say, understand what a hitter was telling you?
Yeah, so I learned a pretty valuable lesson in COVID that really kind of jump started it. During COVID, I went to Instructs that fall, and we were facing a big power. It was an inner squad, but I was facing this a power hitter that we had. It was a young Latin kid, and I threw a sinker in and off his hands. Oh, count, sinker in and off his hands, and he was really, really late. Like, he punched it. He was a righty, punched it to the first base dugout. Really got in on him, and he was really late. And so my thought process on the time is, I'm going to tunnel that with a slider, maybe down and away, or a slider for a strike, and he should get out. And man, did he crank that slide! Like, he hit that so freaking hard. And I remember sitting there, and I'm like, I don't really understand what happened. Like, that was a perfect tunnel. Those are two really good pitches. Like, I did exactly what I wanted to do. why the hell did he hit that so hard? The more I thought about it, the more I watched video, I was like, well, wait a minute. I talked to my coaches at the time, and this was stuff that I had known but never actually utilized. It's stuff that I had heard of, and I was like, yeah, well, in theory it's one thing, but then actually seeing it happen, is another. And so, if you're late on a fastball, I mean, it's probably 93. He's late on a fastball at 93, like, he's going to be right on time for something softer in zone, and wow, he cranked it. So you think I would learn my lesson. So I was like, okay, so I really needed to pay attention to that swing. Well, 2 days later, I'm facing the same kid, same situation. I go first pitch sinker in, and wow, is he late? And I go, and this is where my ego got in. My ego was like, you're going to beat him with a slider. Like, you're going to beat him right here. Threw a slider again. Whack. I was like, there's no freaking way. I'm watching this ball. It's sore. And my left fielder robs a home run there. I was like, oh my God, I got out of it. And I was like, I am never going to be ego tripping again, because that was unbelievable. Like, it was the same exact sequence, same everything. And I was like, okay, so that's like reading a swing. I needed to read a swing. So that was kind of like the introduction that I had to, I really need to be paying attention to what the hitter's telling me in the moment, not just the theory of tunneling 2 pitches. Like, that was this simple point. Like, it works for a little bit, but when at that level on that point, I needed to be doing more. I needed to be smarter about that. So then that I went to high A the following year, and so I kind of learned a little bit more, but I wasn't using it as much. It was more so kind of refining my stuff and learning where my stuff played. Like, is that essentially the first year where data, well, for me, where data was a big piece, and so it was kind of just
it sounds like that cycle turned back over. You needed to relearn what your stuff was actually doing in order to then play it against other people.
Exactly. Like, I needed to collect data, collect a whole bunch more information in 21 in order to learn what I was good at, what I was not good at. I mean, you can be good at something, but what gets you there isn't what keeps you there. And a lot of the time, like, you have to constantly be adapting and changing and learning. So in 2021, I pretty much just was trying to collect information. What works, what doesn't work, and pairing that up against like some lower level scouting reports, like nothing too crazy, but like, something like you can punch this guy in a chase, like, so throw a slider down. You can, this guy's very patient, so you can get ahead with a fastball. It's something simple. Double A is where I really started to learn how to read swings. Like, if I saw a guy, pretty simple, like I said before, step in the bucket and, pull his head off on, say, a fastball, like, you can see he's trying to pull the baseball. Like, I'm going to throw you a slider down and away and try and expose, how far you are, how close you are to that baseball. Like, I want to try and get it further away from you. I want to try and make it softer. I want to expose that swing. And so I had a pretty successful time doing that, and had a good year and continued to learn. So I really, I guess, established the ability to kind of read swings and pay attention to what the hitter is telling me in the box. And then AAA comes around, and I'm reading swings. I'm able to read swing. Like, I can see what a guy is doing in the box. But the thing with AAA is it's far more big league guys with experience than it is guys without service time. So, you could be facing a lineup of 9 guys who have played in the show, and 3 or 4 of them have, 6-7 years who are trying to get back. A few of them have a year and change, and whatever it is, like, but these guys are big league bats. Like, these guys are experienced. And so reading just the swings themselves aren't really enough, because, I've seen Miguel Cabrera do it, where he'll bait guys into throwing certain pitches, which is the meanest thing you can do, I think. Like, but you learn how to read takes. And so another life lesson, I think it was Nomar Mazara, who has 12 years of showtime. He's a lefty, and so I'm throwing heaters away and some some sliders in, and I fall behind. I want to say it's like 2-1, maybe 2-2, and I threw a backdoor. Actually, I'll say it's 2-1, and I threw a backdoor slider that was off the plate, and he really leans into it. Like, he leans into it, but does not swing the bat. I don't see that, because if he's leaning into it, he's a lot closer to that baseball than I think he is. So pitch after that, I went to a fastball like away, and that was right down the middle, and he took it oppo over the fence, like absolutely crushed the baseball. I was like, damn, like a down and away heater and a 2-2 count, like, and that's an oppo home run. Like that is a crazy, that doesn't happen. Like I'm not used to seeing something like that happen. Conversation with the pitching coach, and he goes, man, you completely missed the reads, like the takes. And I was like, takes? How do you read a take? Like he's not doing anything. And said he's doing a lot more than you think he is. Went back, watched the video, and see that like he's leaning over the plate. I should have busted him up and in. Like I should have gotten him off the plate, balanced his stance, balanced his weight so that I could freely use either side. But he leaned over and he was able to take it. So I learned that one. And then now it's kind of a combination of both. You got to be able to read the swings, read the takes, and whatever the hitter is doing in the box at that moment is what you have to go with, what you're learning from them.
It is such a joy to listen to how you are playing the chess game. And the reason it's a joy is, listen, even you, right? You in the facility, everybody that's in this facility genuinely cares about the other kids that are here and wants to see them be really successful. I'm sure that's that way at tons of facilities, but I don't know that they appreciate ever what it quite takes to like actually get and stay at these higher levels or even have these opportunities. And I think that's in every facet. You could take any sport, you could take any job, right? We often presume we're doing enough until we hit a roadblock where we're like, oh my God, I don't even know how to solve this problem right now. And there are so many college kids that I am talking to this year who are just going out and trying to rely on like sheer talent and luck to get guys out. And they're just like, oh, well, that's the pitch that's called, and that's what I'm going to throw. And I'm not saying, listen, some of them don't have the opportunity to shake off or whatever, but you can execute a pitch differently just because it's called that way and, throw it somewhere else. And the amount of preparation that you're putting in, the amount of reflection, that to me is even more crucial. I can't tell you how many times I get a text from a kid and he's like, yeah, I pitched terribly. And I'm like, why terribly? And, they're just like, oh, I just walked this many guys, or I just did X, Y, and Z. Oh, well, okay, what'd you learn from any of that? And what was your mindset during some of those moments? And what tactics did you use to get yourself back in the moment? Or did you just succumb to it and just give in, and now you're just out there and you're praying that the guy hits the ball into the ground?
Yeah, that's I think that's like the difference between, pitching and learning how to pitch, and going up there and throwing. And that's not to say that it's just in college. There are obviously guys in pro ball who are throwers, and some are pitchers. And like, that's what, there's the old saying, win or learn, and you always learn from winning too. But like, if you're successful, great. That's awesome. Like, keep it rolling. But if you don't, you need to understand why. You need to take a second. Well, not just a second, but, take some time and go through your outings, go through, a notebook is really easy for this. Like, you go through what you were doing. Sometimes I black out during my outings, so I don't fully remember, but the more I've grown up and the more time I've spent, I've become a lot more conscious in the moment. And that's just kind of continued every outing. You get more and more aware and more conscious of exactly what you're doing, what you're thinking, how to get yourself back. Like you said, like get yourself the tactics that you use in order for you to reset, to refocus, to hone in on what you're doing. Like, bring awareness to the situation, because it's very easy to get caught up and to, like you said, to succumb to a situation and pressure. And it's very easy to do that. And it's very easy to get on the mound and just keep on throwing pitches, to get on the mound and just throw whatever they call and not think, because you're taking an ego punch, you're taking a gut punch. If you're walking guys or if you're giving up doubles, like that sucks. And it's easy to want to just blank it out and just keep on going and hope that, you get 3 outs and you can walk off the mound and, come out of the game. But you can't, it's easy to do that. Like, it's difficult and it sucks. And it's a man in the mirror type thing where you have to check yourself and, I guess, as we were talking about before, like the preparation, like is learning these tools. Like that's what training in the off season is like, how do you reset yourself? If you're having a bad day in the winter, how do you get yourself back to being focused? How do you get yourself back to locking in on the target, taking a deep breath and executing? But if you're not doing that in the winter, why are you going to do that with 2 runners on in the 7th inning, and you're up by 1? Like you're not going to do it then, so like, the preparation comes from, every day having your plan and your focus in the off season, but then like building it through the year. The game itself is just an expression of your training essentially, and how you can control yourself. So, that's what preparation is.
It's such a great point. I think, it's unfortunate, but the nature of the beast in this game right now is that you have to chase velo, right? Initially when you're young, because your career will just be over unless you do. And, it is very unfortunate, but I think also what comes with that is once kids cross these certain thresholds, they have these elements of entitlement. Like, oh, now I throw this hard, or I have this slider that's really nasty or something, so I'm entitled to be good. And I don't have to work as hard because I'm more talented than my opponents. And in fact, that might be true. And for a lot of kids that I know that struggle, they are in fact significantly more talented than some of the others. But it is the kids who experienced failure young, failure throughout high school, failure initially in college, right? And when they experienced that failure, they didn't look outward. They were like, oh shit, I probably have to change some things. I should probably figure out or find people in my network that can help me uncover what it is I gotta change so that I can be good. The ones who continue to struggle look outward, and it is all about what is happening to me and not about what I'm doing to affect my scenario. And I think the greatest part of this convo we're having today is how much you are attempting to control your reality. And I think that is often lost on most kids, is that they don't spend enough time taking control of their reality. And they think that training in the weight room, throwing a bullpen, or training themselves on the throwing floor is enough of that control. And what you just remarked is, no, you have to control even that reality. You have to work to get better at that reality and mirror it to what you're going to experience. Or if you don't, like, honestly, some of these kids, they have 8 innings pitched, 20 innings pitched at the collegiate level. How much has been created to mirror that? So why are you really upset if you're not successful with only 20 innings of experience in that scenario? And have you duplicated that in any other environment? And it is why I wanted to have this conversation. Like I said at the start of this, I've always been impressed with how much preparation goes in, even to your training days. And you and I have talked a lot about the dangerous side of that at times as well, which is where it can go too far. But when it becomes your rock, I empathize with you, because it is tough to veer away from it, and at times you almost end up leaning too far into it. Not necessarily just you. I'm talking in a general sense. And that can be really challenging for people, because it it gets to this point where it's like, well, wait a minute, this is what got me here. It's this preparation that did this for me. Well, how am I supposed to, now what? Do I just do more of it? Or do I need to work on other elements of me? And I know I'm doing a lot of talking, and I don't want to, but the point that you made about blacking out is so incredible. I mean, I can relate to that tremendously. I can tell you about 3 pitching performances I've had in my entire life because the rest I wasn't there for. And the dangerous part of that is your subconscious is at play the entire time there. And you're not really conscious about what's going on.
And then I guess how you perform is the way I would see it is, well, obviously there's that luck aspect, but the preparation that you put into developing that subconscious, like when you're going out there and you're working every day, like who takes over on the mound, and if you're, the dude who has been taking care of all the details that you need to, and you're fully prepared, then it's fine to have that, subconscious on the mound. But like, if you have been skipping stuff and you're not doing everything that you need to prepare, and then, then you do black out, like, who is that guy? Because you don't know him, you're not there.
Right.
So like, that's what everybody else sees. And some people, unfortunately, well, fortunately and unfortunately, like if they're in some of the bigger programs, they're going to be on TV seeing that. Like, and so that's tough.
It's very hard. It's very hard. Well, listen, this has been absolutely incredible. I hope every single college kid listens to this, high school kid listens to this, because I think all too often, for whatever reason in the sport of baseball, we presume it's easy. And and I just don't know what that is. But the knowledge that you just provided is invaluable. So we appreciate that.
Thank you. Of course. It's always fun.
Yeah. All right, brother. Keep dominating.
Absolutely. Sounds good, Nick. Thank you.